The GOP's war on woke is surging to new levels as book bans have nearly doubled since 2021, according to the American Library Association. Republican-led states are buckling down on their restrictions of certain books, saying that they contain sexually explicit content, LGBTQ themes, and racial inequality, and this surge doesn't stop there. In a retaliatory move, GOP lawmakers in Missouri voted to defund all of the state's public libraries following a lawsuit by two library groups to overturn a Missouri law that banned 300 books in school libraries. And over in Texas, a small town threatened to close their 3 public libraries after a federal judge in Austin ordered them to return all of the books that they banned. At a public meeting on Thursday, the Llano County commissioners listened to people argue both sides and came to this conclusion.
The library will remain open. We will try this in the courts, not through social media or through news media.
Joining me now is Brittany Packnett Cunningham, MSNBC contributor and the host of the podcast Undistracted. Brittany, my friend, it's good to see you. Look, let's start with Texas. People in Llano County argued that their First Amendment rights were violated after the books were removed. I want to let our viewers know that some of the books removed included 4 children's picture books with titles like the following: Larry the Farting Leprechaun and Gary the Goose and his gas on the loose. Now, listen, we can laugh because it's funny, but it's absurd. Because even after the commissioners voted unanimously to keep the libraries open, of course, after a federal judge told them that they had to, the fight's still not over. So what do you think's going to come next when this lawsuit is brought back to the courts?
I think what's unfortunately going to come next is a continued push from the GOP, not only to ban books, but to spread across America their vision for a country that allows them to hold on to power at any cost. Katie, you're absolutely right. It can be comical to realize that we've gotten here in part because we weren't supposed to be able to get here as a supposedly democratic country. This is not who America was supposed to be. And yet we've got Republican-controlled legislatures all across the country that are committed to retaining their power by any means necessary. Let's be clear, Katie, 92% of voters across this country are against book banning. It is wildly unpopular. It is perhaps one of the most unpopular things that they are doing, and yet they are committed to it, which means that they don't actually care about democracy. They don't care about the rule of the people. They don't care about the voices of the people. All they care about is maintaining an autocracy that allows them to remain in power, to share only the history that benefits them, and to ensure that what is taught to our young people and spread across our communities is a history and a vision of America that only promotes their power.
Let's talk frankly, Brittany, about how insidious this is, because the tentacles spread far and wide. On April 5th, the Texas Senate approved 2 bills restricting drag performances. One of those bills, SB 1601, says that it will defund municipal libraries if they host events like popular drag queen story hours. Now, that bill is heading to the House, and if it approved, it'll go into effect in September. What do you make of this threat of restricting state funds to public libraries just to target drag?
I mean, what's clear is that the Republicans are ready and willing to use every single tool they have in their toolbox to get their agenda accomplished. Texas is a place that is not concerned about restricting the kind of assault rifles that killed those young people in Uvalde. They're not interested in restricting the harm that happens to LGBTQ communities in their state. Instead, they're trying to restrict harmless fun that has been happening for decades. And so what we see in Texas is what we're seeing across the entire country. And so often these states are using these opportunities as testing grounds. So if this strategy can work in Texas, then it can work in North Carolina, it can work in Arizona, it can work in Florida, it can work in Missouri. This is the entire point. The entire point is to begin in Texas, but never to end in Texas, but rather to use these as a strategy testing ground to make sure that they know how to get this kind of work accomplished across the country.
So, Brittany, let's talk about the positive possibilities of a solution. You listed a whole bunch of states there: Louisiana, Missouri, Texas, Florida. All of these Republican-led states' proposals and bills show how much of an authoritarian escalation in things like book banning and defunding libraries is happening across our country. But a top Republican donor just announced that he's stopping his financial support of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis because of DeSantis' stance on abortion and book banning. Is that the key to ending the culture wars, pulling money?
It's certainly going to be one of the necessary keys, but not only do we have to ensure that these kind of folks are not receiving the financial support that they would like, we have to make sure that the voters and the organizations that turn out voters in opposition to them are fully funded as well. So I would love to see that money pulled from Ron DeSantis, and I would love to see that money funneled into a Black Voters Matter or an organization that is committed to making sure that somebody like Ron DeSantis not only loses this election, but that a party that embraces these kinds of ideas continues to lose power. We're talking about banning abortion, banning books. We're talking about banning drag shows when we should be talking about banning assault rifles, increasing access to educational materials, and ensuring safety and well-being for all of our young people. That is the kind of vision that Americans want and the kind of vision that we deserve. And I'm hopeful to see that big donors and small donors alike are showing up for the candidates who are proposing that kind of vision for America instead of one that is authoritarian in nature, and that is supposed to be exactly who we are not.
Brittany, I got less than a minute, but I want to talk about how these public libraries closings and defunding, it impacts not just kids. Some of these libraries are actually providing services like internet and the ability for communities to have educational resources. It's not just children. I mean, talk about the impact it has on rural communities, especially in states like Missouri.
So as you shared, as you know, Katie, rather, I am from Missouri, and 34% of Missouri sits in rural spaces, and 20% of Missourians lack access to internet at all. Many more lack access to high-speed broadband internet. So as you said, these are community centers. These are places where people go and apply for jobs. These are places where people go and pay their bills, because that internet access is so essential to American life all across the country. So here we are in 2023, and we're not talking about expanding that access and making sure that more people can have access to that at home. We're talking about restricting that access and closing down those community centers that have been safe havens for so many people. I remember back in 2014 during the Ferguson uprising, the Ferguson Library was the place where we educated children when our communities had been turned into a war zone by the local police. Libraries continue to be heartbeats to communities, and they need to be embraced by our states and not defunded.